Hi, I'm Kenya and welcome to my YouTube channel. So today I want to talk about this manual. It is Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promised 2025, okay? So today I want to just go over the forward. I want to go week by week, chapter for chapter. I want to break it down and really dive into it and get an understanding of exactly what it is, okay? So we've all heard about it all over social media. Taraji P. Henson talked about Project 2025. And since I'm a curious person, obviously I went to download the manual and I started reading, okay? All right, so let's go over the forward of the manual. So the forward is A Promise to America, written by Kevin D. Roberts, PhD. So first things first, I wanted to just find out just a little bit of information on Kevin D. Roberts, PhD, just to see, you know, his credentials and what he is actually about, all right? So Kevin D. Roberts is a political strategist and president of the Heritage Foundation. Now, the Heritage Foundation promotes conservative ideologies, okay? So this manual, which is titled Mandate for Leadership, aka Project 2025, is a conservative promise intended for conservatives and individuals on the far right. The Project 2025 manual was inspired by the 1981 manual, also called Mandate for Leadership, which was written in 1981 when Ronald Reagan was elected as the 40th president of the United States. So the main idea is to follow the same formula as Ronald Reagan when he was president to achieve the desired results as Ronald Reagan. What is Project 2025? That's what we all want to know, right? Like, exactly what is it? Everybody's talking about it, but what is it? So I'm gonna play a video of Kevin D. Roberts basically talking about Project 2025 and what it is. So
what Project 2025 is trying to do is issue a corrective, a series of new regulation or deregulation, new policies, new leadership to undo, to correct the century-long capital P progressive project of establishing a fourth branch of government, the administrative state. This goal transcends Republican and Democrat. It actually is exceedingly constitutional. Why would you be opposed to a project whose main aim is to restore this constitutional republic? The answer ultimately, just is sort of personified by that history professor, is that they simply can't handle the truth that for the first time in the history of the conservative movement in this country, we're as organized as they are. We are as prepared as they have always been to take the reins of power and use it appropriately for the everyday American. Every American waking up tomorrow and saying, I at least don't have to worry about the government over-regulating my existence. I don't have to worry about 350 armed agents with the Environmental Protection Agency, just to cite one example of the insidiousness of the administrative state. And we ought to celebrate that across the political spectrum. Here is an opportunity on the brink of these 5 potentially landmark decisions by the Supreme Court that we get to take our country back. If the political left and the political right and the political center in this country are intellectually honest about wanting to restore civil discord, you and I both are skeptical of that as it relates to the left, then Project 2025 is the answer. This is how we sort of reset the balance between the proper amount of power that the federal government needs to have, but also, most importantly, the power that the people have.
And so with that being said, as stated earlier, Project 2025 was launched by the Heritage Foundation in 2022. It's 30 chapters totaling 922 pages and lay out clear and concrete policy for the White House offices, cabinet, departments, Congress, and agencies, commissions, and boards. 400 plus scholars and policy experts from across the conservative movement and around the country have contributed to the manual, writing and research and things of that nature. This is an agenda prepared by and for conservatives who will be ready day one of the next administration to save our country from brink and disaster. The forward begins with Dr. Roberts comparing current times to the 1970s. So he writes, the late 1970s were by any measure a historic low point for America. Now, the 70s were before my time, but of course I did do some research. So then he goes on to say, today, America and the conservative movement are enduring an era of division and danger akin to the late 70s. Now, first, let's talk about the word danger. I feel like this is a word used to invoke fear in the conservative party, just the Republican Party, the far right individuals over on this way, okay? And I feel like they use key words like danger to describe the country. And I feel like that sparks up an emotion to make people have some sort of fear, like, oh, we must vote Republican. This is the right side, that is the wrong side. And I noticed that he uses a couple of those like little buzzwords throughout the forward that had me like, okay, I see what you're doing there, sir. I see what you're doing there, sir. I mean, it's pretty persuasive, and I'm sure that's what the point of this forward was, to be persuasive, to draw you in, to get you to read and to find out exactly, you know, what Project 2025 is. So good job on that. So like I said, I did have to do a little research to find out what was going on in the 70s. So secondly, so the 1970s were known as a pivot of change in world history, focusing especially on the economic upheavals followed by the post-war economic boom. Also during the 1970s, there was the 1974 Watergate scandal that Richard Nixon was involved in. Now, Richard Nixon was the president before Ronald Reagan. There was the fall of Saigon in 1975, which marked the end of the Vietnam War. And if I remember correctly, I did read an article where the New York Times leaked classified information about the Vietnam War, which caused the US to have to pull out of the war early. Also, the 1973 oil crisis, which caused the financial crisis throughout the developed world. And I remember my grandmother and my aunts, which would be her sisters, telling me about the oil like shortage and how they would stand at gas stations with gas cans. There would be long lines. People would run out of gas while waiting. Fights would erupt about who was there first. It was just a whole lot of craziness. 1975, the Soviet Union's socialism of liberals was something that was basically known about worldwide, and the US believed that this could affect the US citizens here. We would be influenced to want socialism, and we all know this is a capitalistic society. It's all about how much capital do you have. It is a society very much of survival of the fittest. You sink or swim. And we know that the conservatives, basically, they detest socialists and liberals for this reason. Then Kevin D. Roberts goes on to write that the contemporary elites have even repurposed the worst ingredient of the 1970s, radical chic, to build a totalitarian cult known today as the Great Awakening, okay? Now, when I hear the word radical chic, I think of the hippie movement. I feel like that was during a time where young adults were going against the norms, you know, and they were just out living their lives freely in society. I feel like that was very much a rebellious movement, the hippie movement. What do you guys think? That's just my take on the hippie movement. And Kevin D. Roberts uses the word totalitarian cult to describe the Great Awakening. So individuals that were known as totalitarian would be Joseph Stalin, Adolf Hitler, and Kim Il-sung, just to name a few. So I feel like the word totalitarian is another buzzword that would evoke fear. And I like to use these terms. It's like something to get you like to pay attention, you know? And the words a Great Awakening. I feel like as a black person in the US, like growing up, when we use the word woke, that just means like we are aware of things that are going on around us. And I feel like that term has been like kind of flipped and switched to mean something that is not what it was originally supposed to mean. And so the awakening is basically described as a progressive or leftist political or social movement. What do you think? Are you a part of the Great Awakening? Let me know in the comments. Annual mandate for leadership, which is the conservative promise. So what is the conservative promise? So there are 4 points that he highlighted in his forward. And promise one would be to restore the family as the centerpiece of American life and protect our children. And so he goes on to write, today, the American family is in crisis. 40% of all children are born to unmarried mothers, including 70% of Black children. Okay, so why? Why are there so many single parent homes? Why are 70% of Black households single family homes? We can go all the way back to slavery, from the times where the slave master just woke up today and said, y'all know what? It's Black Friday. You know what, Tunde? I can get $500 for you. Come on, we're about to put you on the block. And then he's selling off the men, off the plantation, away from their families, which they never see their children again. So fatherless homes have been a thing since the beginning of slavery. Since before, because when my ancestors were being kidnapped from the motherlands of the Bantu region of Africa, all the way to West Africa and maybe certain parts of East Africa, you guys were taking men away from their children. You were taking women away from their children, putting them on boats, bringing them to the new world. And so this isn't a new phenomenon. It's just like, this is an environment that the government has created from the beginning of time, but now they're addressing it as an issue. Why is it an issue? Also, a lot of our homes are fatherless because of the men are in jail. If you haven't seen a documentary called 13th, it's on Netflix. Go watch it, okay? Go watch it. And also there's a book called The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, where in the book they talk about how Black and brown neighborhoods are more policed than other neighborhoods. Therefore, Black and brown men are more likely going to be in jail than white men. And all the statistics and all the facts are in the book The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. So check that out as well, okay? I've also read that one myself, and so that's why I'm speaking on it. So the conservatives want to do away with critical race theory, as we all know, in our school system, which I really think is important. They also feel like gender assignments should be considered child abuse, which I feel like if you are a child, you're under 18 and under. I don't feel like a doctor should be doing gender assignment surgery on you, because I don't really feel like you really know who you are, personally me, and I'm definitely not a conservative. But I was watching something on TikTok where a doctor basically said that your frontal lobe isn't really developed until around 30-ish. Before, people would say 25, but really it's 30-ish when you really start to get to know who you are. So I do feel like that is way too young to have gender assignment surgery. That right there I do agree with. Social media platforms are dangerous to our children, and they were talking about how certain apps, especially TikTok, is, I guess I could see how it can be considered a link to pornography, because when parents are like posting their children and then you see like that video has 1,000 saves and you're like, who is saving the little kid's video? And then you're nosy, so you click to see who saved it, and it's nothing but grown men. I feel like it can be a pedophile's playground. However, as a parent, you have to monitor your children, monitor them. Also talks about how Roe v. and Wade was a win for family systems in the US, bringing back families overall. All right, which I don't agree, okay? Let people make their own choices, because then people will go out and start doing what they did back in the day. I was talking to one of my cousins like a month ago, and she said that when she was a teenager, maybe in the 60s or the 70s, she got an abortion with hangers. That is so dangerous. She could have messed around and never been able to have kids again. And her mother was so poor that she paid the lady in food stamps. And so I feel like not giving women choices can lead to a lot of death rates and just a lot of women doing illegal things to have abortions. So promise number 2 will be to dismantle the administrative state and return self-governance to the American people, okay? So dismantling the administrative state is top priority for the next president. So that will be one of the things that they will be focusing on the most. So if you don't know, the administrative state refers to the policy making work done by bureaucracies, of all the federal government departments, agencies, and millions of employees. One thing that they want to focus on is the fiscal budget for the year. He states unaccountable spending is the lifelong blood of the great awakening. Okay, and I feel like student loan debt is something that the Republicans want to put a stop to. As we all know, Joe Biden did want to eliminate $20,000 in student loan debt from borrowers, just to put ease on just US citizens so that we can most likely have a better quality of life. And that was stopped. That didn't happen. Now there is the Save Debt Loan Repayment Program, which I am on, and I feel like that is a way that US citizens like myself who went to college are able to afford to pay our student loans back and be able to just live life. Because I feel like if a lot of people had to make those large student loan payments in addition to their rents and their mortgage, or they're having their children, cars, that it would be impossible for a lot of families. And now I got an email yesterday actually from our repayment company basically saying that they're trying to do away with that as well, which can hurt a lot of us US citizens, and it will really affect our quality of life. So with Promise 2, they also want to defeat the threat of the Chinese Communist Party. Who is the Chinese Communist Party? So the Chinese Communist Party basically guides the education and development of the working class citizens. And so I guess Cuba would be considered communist. And so whereas here this is a capitalist society where basically it's survival of the fittest, I feel like the Chinese Communist Party, their government, and also Cuba's government, they make sure their people are straight, the working class people are straight, okay? So I'm gonna insert a clip of Kevin D. Roberts talking about the Chinese Communist Party, just to give you an idea of what the beef with the Chinese Communist Party is.
At the top of the list for the Heritage Foundation isn't just how evil the regime of the Chinese Communist Party is, evidenced by using this new AI software for espionage, but because Americans are complicit in this. Good, honest Americans who are well-intentioned, as Kara has talked about, participating by having TikTok on their phones, allowing their kids and grandkids to do this. In the history of the American Republic, had to confront an enemy. They're not an opponent, they're not an adversary, they're an enemy who is as strong as we are in every respect, and obviously, as evidenced by this AI usage and this software, they're beginning to lap us when it comes to technology.
So promise number 3 is to defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats, okay? So they want to steer away from Woodrow Wilson's foreign policy advice known as Wilsonianism or Wilsonian idealism, okay? So Woodrow Wilson was the 28th president, if you didn't know. In short, Wilsonianism aims for world peace, which includes intervening in other countries' conflict. And so this beef that we have right now in the Middle East wouldn't be a thing if Woodrow Wilson was in office. And he would be stopping conflict. He would be over here saying ceasefire, stop bombing people. You killed all the kids in Gaza, okay? That would be Woodrow Wilson, and they don't want that, okay? Kevin D. Roberts also mentions environmental extremism, and that is anti-human because fuel is needed for so many things, like to run our cars, heat our homes, and run factories and things of that nature. He also does mention that the Chinese Communist Party spies on the American people, and he also accuses them of using apps like TikTok to spy on people. He also talks about big tech companies and how we were all encouraged to learn how to code, but that these big tech companies were giving our information over to the Chinese Communist Party. I don't know why they would want our information, US citizens, but they're just accusing the Chinese Communist Party of espionage, and this is why they want to ban TikTok, okay? Now, promise number 4 would be to secure our God-given individual rights to enjoy the blessings of liberty, okay? So then Dr. Roberts goes on to rant and basically rave in this portion. I felt it was a rant and a rave about woke culture warriors, okay? Socialism, fascism, sorry, that's a hard word for me. Communism, progressives, Marxists, the Soviet Union, North Korea. And basically he was saying that we adopt these countries' ideologies, that it will disrupt the blessings of liberty that we basically enjoy as Americans. Things so far about Project 2025. Did you read it? Leave your comments below. Let's discuss, but let's also be respectful, okay? And was it a day ago, Joe Biden did drop out of the presidential election and Kamala Harris was nominated to be the next presidential candidate. And so that is something I will be following in the weeks to come. We only have 4 months until the presidential election. In the next video, I will be discussing Section 1, taking the reins of the government, and I'll be talking about Chapter 1, the White House office. And I just feel like we know about government, but we don't actually know like the ranks and how the government is actually run. And from what I gather, Section 1 is basically just breaking down how government is run. And so I'm going to be going over Chapter 1, the White House office, which will be written by Rick Dearborn. And yeah, if you're interested, then hit the subscribe button, and I'm going to see you guys in my next video so we could discuss. All right, so I hope that this video was helpful, and if you found value in my video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Toodles. So